Font face. This is one of those things I don't use, but everyone's really into it, so I'm going to teach it, even though I, as a non-designer, I actually don't think Comic Sans is that hideous. Don't shoot me. I'm not a designer, right? Okay. I think apparently not. I think it's bad, but I don't think it's like, I don't have a visceral reaction when I see it. So font face, it's an at rule. So like our at media, right? Our at supports. Did we cover any others today? No, I think that was, oh, at viewport we covered. Okay. Now we have at font face. And the thing is, you guys probably never really thought about the at rules, right? And look how many we're learning. This is so exciting. So, so when you include a font face, you actually create this rule. And what you'll notice is a lot of the at rules are basically, we are going to contain information in this section that is kind of one step removed from the CSS. So this is, with at font face, we actually declare a font family that we can then use. So here we've used it in our HTML just like we always would. It's just a word that you've never seen. You know Arial, you know sans serif, but you've never heard of font blah. So we're going to create font blah. The first step is putting the at rule, the beginning and end, the opening bracket and closing bracket. That's step number one. Then you use font family. And in the at rule for font face, you use the same property, name, as you do here. But there you're creating it, and here you're using it. Does that make sense? Okay. Then you say, hey, because Microsoft, you do the declaration for Microsoft first on one line, and that's all you put. And old Microsoft is EOT files. That's it. That's all they support. And then on the next line, you repeat the same gibberish, and you put a question mark with IE fix, because we need to fix IE. IE sees the pound mark, stops reading forward. It just thinks everything else is just a hash. It stops reading all the way to the semicolon. And then you put all the other files that you need to create. And so we'll cover creating them in a minute. And so this is your declaration for including the file. And this basically says the source of my font is either blah EOT, blah WAF, blah TTF, or blah SVG. Then you tell it font style normal and font weight normal, or it could be font weight bold or whatever. This is why I don't use fonts. Because here I'm saying this font blah is font weight normal, font style normal, which means I have to import a different font file if I want bold, a different font file if I want italic, and a separate one if I want both bold and italic. That's 4 separate fonts. If you've ever looked at your fonts in your font files on your computer, you have like 27 different Arials or something ridiculous like that. I made that number up, but you really don't have 27. I don't know what it is. Okay, normally I wouldn't correct myself, but I'm on videotape, so I have to pretend I'm not talking about it. Yeah.
Couldn't you just reference the font face blah from another class or something, and then in there apply italic or the weight or whatever? Would that not pass on?
So a font, there's a difference between font and a typeface. So a typeface is actually Arial or sans serif, but a font is an actual file. And if you look at the font files that you will actually have New Times Roman italic, New Times Roman bold, New Times Roman as different font files. So you actually have to pull those files in. The browser will try to make it Arial and will try to make it bold, but if you actually have a designer looking at this, they will know the difference. They'll be like, that anti-aliasing on that K is wrong. And you're like, I don't care, because Comic Sans is okay by me. So if you guys all start liking Comic Sans, then your designers will just stop leaving you alone. They're like, you got it close enough. Just don't put Comic Sans in. And you're like, okay, cool. So then, now that you've included it, you can reference it and use it. So let's go through the syntax again. And this is not updated for 10. But as you see, 9 supports E, started supporting TTF. and WAF, so I just don't know if 9 is supporting SVG. But no other browser is ever going to support EOT. Only Microsoft supports EOT. So it's not like we have to worry about these not supporting EOT. What we really just need to do is use TTF. But notice that we're still at 9, so we still need to include EOT. And then iOS mobile originally was just SVG. So if you're still supporting the first iPhone, I believe you still have to support SVG. And SVG is kind of cool, so I wish that all of them supported it, because you can actually just use SVG and write your own SVG. But so the syntax again is font face, and then you declare the family name that you make up. Then you give the source, and there's that syntax. And I'm going to show you a service online, so you never have to write that. You never have to handwrite that, ever. Then font weight, font style, and character set. And character set is really cool, and I'm going to show you why in about 2 minutes. But I'm first going to go over a few other things, and then we'll cover the automatic generation. Issues with fonts. You do not own any fonts, most likely. If you work for Best Buy, maybe Best Buy actually purchased a font for $100,000. And then you can own it, you own it, and you can distribute it however you like. Chances are that they didn't. Because who wants to pay $100,000 for a font, right? I don't. Comic Sans is fine. So who owns a font? The reason that is important is because when you include fonts like that, you're distributing it. You're including, whenever you link to a file, anyone can access it, they can download it, they can use it. Right? When we did the source here, you just download that file, and that file, you've just distributed your font blot to everyone's computer. So you're not allowed to give away Microsoft Office. You're not allowed to give away fonts. So who owns the font? You don't, but there are services for it. And I'm going to cover, I'm not going to actually cover the services. I'm going to cover 2 free services. Then the other issue is the flicker of unstyled content. Different browsers handle not having the font slightly differently. Some browsers, and I don't know which ones are which, one browser actually doesn't load the text until the font file is loaded, and then all the text appears. And so you have a flicker of no content. And then other ones will actually load the default font, and when the font comes in, they'll style the font, the text. And so you have a flicker of unstyled content. My major reason, you know, these are kind of bad, but my major reason is file size. How many characters does Arial have, or New Times Roman? I have no clue, but it has that snowman on it, that sad face, you know, that character that I didn't know what it was. File sizes can be huge. And then you need to include, might need to include bold and italic on top of that, and bold italic. And font services is just sitting out there for no apparent reason and should be deleted from that font deck. That means nothing. Okay, so Google Fonts has hundreds of free open source fonts that are optimized for the web. And you can go through them and you can say, I want a fat font that's tall, that's italic, and that kind of looks like handwriting. And you're like, okay, and it'll find you 4 of them or something. And it's really easy to do. You just include a link to their API, and then you use the CSS. You just use the font name in your CSS. It's all well and good. I have no clue what is in their API and what kind of statistics they're recording on me. So I don't know if I care. In these decks, this text right up here is actually, I believe, a font. Let me just check.
Trebuchet.
It is. Trebuchet MS. Someone's much more of a designer than I am, or looked at the.
Oh no, I just saw it in the inspector earlier.
Oh, okay. So some reason, font family Lotto and sans serif, it got overwritten because I overwrote it. So let's there. So went to get the font, and now it's Lotto. So how did I include that? In my header, God, I hope it's here. No, in this header rather. Here's my link. And let's open this wide so you can see it. It says fonts, Google API, CSS, family Lato. And then it says all of the sizes. I'm downloading italic and regular. This is normal, this is bold, and this is light. So I don't know what it's actually sending me. I guess I could look in my resources? No, in network rather. Wow. Total WTF. I mean, this is my, I don't even know what it's telling me. It's like, what did it get 24 times? And why did it get it? But it's tiny little sizes. So my thought is that this is actually probably reading something, yeah?
It actually sends you,
Yeah, it could
the
do
link sends you a CSS file that has the font face rules for each of those different fonts.
Okay. So headers, where are my responses? Request header. Responses right here. This request has no available data. Cookies, bunch of cookies, timing, 148 milliseconds. A tenth of a second to get it. I don't really care, but so all I did was include one file, right? That's the only time I really mentioned Google, because that picture of Google is that you saw where it said Google Fonts, that's actually on my server. That's a picture. So it does like 27 requests. I'm sure some of them are tracking whatever I'm doing. I don't know what it does. This picture is on my server. This is not there. Every other page is live, like here. I can interact with their page. You saw I can move it. This is just a picture because Google doesn't let you embed the page. So here I embedded the page, and then this is really cool, and this is what I really wanted to cover. But I'm going to open it in a new window. So this is Font Squirrel Font Face Generator. And this is what you're going to be using if you actually do include fonts. Because you need the TTF, the EOT, the SVG, the WAF, or whatever. And you also want it to be the smallest file size possible. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first step you do is add fonts. And I'm not going to show you how to add a font, because you add a font, and then it'll tell you, oh, this font's not, you're not legally allowed to do this font if it's one of those big font houses that actually has a little script in it and they know which fonts aren't allowed. But if you go to like freefonts.com and pull a free font, you can just put that on it's a free font. So you click expert. Then you choose what you want. If you want to support the iPhone 1, you can do that. You don't have to. It allows you to do all these things. Match the height of other fonts. So let's say you're using Trebuchet Verdana as a default. If this doesn't show up and you want it to be the same size, you use that, whatever. What I really wanted to show you was custom subsetting. So one thing that graphic designers really like are ampersands. And they like an ampersand of a particular font, right? Comic Sans is fine by me, so I don't really care what my ampersand looks like, but they really, really do. So we want a single character. And look, it is going to create a font with only one character. So why would I want to do this? Because they want to include their ampersand whenever the ampersand is there. And I don't know what color I'm going to have. I don't know what font size I'm going to have. So I definitely can't import an image. But do I want to include 10,000 Arial characters or whatever from a font? No. I only am using that one character. So why should I be importing? I would say huge, but file sizes aren't huge like this. But you know what I mean. You don't want to include a huge file size. You just want to include this one character because that's all you're going to use. And because we have this never used, no one ever uses this, but the char set, you can actually say, use this font family just for this character. That's it. Like that's the cool. So if you want to include an ampersand, and it has to be a specific font, the only way to do this is this way. You probably have been including images, and then you're like, oh shoot, we changed to a different shade of blue, and now I have to, you don't have to worry. You can actually include fonts. But be very wary before you include 4 font sizes that you don't legally own to send to a mobile device, because I don't really want 10,000 characters. So another example I want to give you is I have a font that I use on my site called Standardista, right? And so here, because I type Standardista here, these are the only characters in the word because I reuse the letter A and the letter D, right? So it's just going to make me a 7-character, which, since in my blog, the header says Standardista, that's the only thing I would need that font for, right? Don't need to include a full character set. Okay. I probably should have made the S capital, and then it would have done both. Okay. So let's stay in our deck. Any questions about Font Squirrel? Okay, the last thing about Font Squirrel, because I forgot to mention this, is when you hit yes, the fonts I'm uploading are legally eligible for web embedding. That has to do with the legal ownership of it. And you create your font, it actually gives you the CSS to include. So that whole thing with that EOT, blah, 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 that question mark pound sign thing was added later. Before it was a question mark smiley face, and then they realized that didn't work for Android 2.1 or something like that. So they keep that updated, and you don't have to keep thinking about it. They do it for you.